Camera recording.
Hi everyone, we are Team Agone. I'm Riley, I'm our release manager. Kayla is our recorder, Sam's our architect, and Jonathan is our team lead along with our mentor Vova. And we are partnering with Power Labs, and their goal is to enable athletes to train and stay healthy through wearable devices such as Apple Watches, Fitbits. And essentially what they do is they take the data off of these devices, such as how fast you're running, how far you're running, your heart rate, things like that. And they use it to predict and prevent injuries. The CEO of Power Labs is Adam, but we've been contacting mostly Travis. And to tell you a little bit more about Power Labs and their current system and problems is Sam.
So this is our client's current system. And the first step in their system is that they're creating an environment. And this environment just means like a Google Drive filled with files that are shared between our client and the coach that they're working with. And so once our client creates that, then they're creating dashboards. And these dashboards are just holding the information for the coach to analyze later on in the process. And then after all that it's done, then our client is emailing all these athletes that the coach wants to work with. And in these emails is a Google form link to fill out that'll have all the preliminary information that the coach wants to know, and it'll populate into the environment that our client created in the beginning. So once the athlete enters all that information in, now the coach can start assigning workouts to them. And then once the coach assigns a workout, an email is then sent to the athlete and saying that this is your workout for the week or 2 weeks, depending on how the coach does things. And so once the athlete completes that workout, then they're entering the data manually or through our client's API. And this all depends on whether or not the athlete has a sports watch. So once the athlete enters all that and it populates into the spreadsheet that correlates to them, then the coach can start analyzing that data to then create a workout for the next time. And then that process is iterated as that coach is working with that athlete. And so we currently see 4 main problems with this system. And the first one is it takes a very long time to initiate the system because it's a constant back and forth between our client and the coach that they're working with, that it takes up to 2 months for this system to initiate. The second problem is that there's a lot of investment of our clients' time to the point where they can't really broaden their range to work with more coaches. And the third problem is there's no messaging between the coach and the client and the athlete to see if they're both on the same page on whether or not the workouts that are being assigned to them works for them the best. And the last problem is with the more athletes that the coach is working with, the more difficult it becomes to analyze because all this information is on a spreadsheet. So our solution to all these problems is to create a web app where all this is in one area. And so the first thing in our system is that the coach is creating the environment and dashboards, and they're doing this by creating an account on our website. And then once that's done, then the website automates emails to the athletes with an invitation to sign up for our website. And when they're signing up, they're creating their profiles and entering all that information that the coach wants to know. So once all that's done and it populates into the coach's system, then the coach can start assigning workouts to the athlete. And again, automated emails are sent to the athlete saying, this is your workout for this amount of time. And then once that athlete again does the workout, it's the same thing where the data is collected manually or through our client's API, depending on the sports watch. And then after that, then the coach can analyze the data by either singling out a single athlete or a group of athletes, depending on how the coach wants to organize things. And then they sign a workout, and that system is done all over again.
So to make our solution, there's a few key functional, non-functional, and environmental requirements that are driving our implementation. The biggest is that we want our web portal to be personable to each coach and to each team. And to do so, we're going to have different dashboard views for the athlete, the coach, the staff, and other users by having a hierarchy of users. We also are using AWS hosting services, and our client has an existing API that we are required to work with. They already have their API set up to collect the biometric data. So that was a big environmental constraint, is being able to work with that. We're going to stream data through a custom database, and we're going to have secure user authentication because, the data could be seen as sensitive. And to tell you a little bit more about that is Kayla.
So for a quick overview of how we've built the web portal to meet our clients' requirements, I've broken down the front end and the back end of our system based on the primary tools that we use to implement them. The back end is built using a combination of AWS for hosting services, PostgreSQL for data storage, and AWS Cognito for authentication. The front end of our web application is built using AWS Amplify, React.js framework, HTML and CSS, and lastly, we have a stretch goal for the front end that consists of visualization using Apex charts for the data that we pull into our website. To describe some of our tools in a little bit more detail, for hosting and storage, as I mentioned, we're going to be using AWS and PostgreSQL. We've chosen to use these tools because they integrate really well together while also allowing us to use AWS for hosting our web application and connecting Postgres to it to fetch data and store information pertaining to athlete biometrics. Cognito is a service that's offered by AWS, and it can be integrated into web and mobile applications. We're building a web application, and Cognito is somewhat of a middleware for us. And through use of Cognito, we can configure the AWS backend so that we're able to set up user authentication and verification settings. This includes everything from what type of requirements are used for authenticating users and how they'll receive verification messages, whether that's a link or an email containing a verification code. And then in the front end, we also develop JavaScript files for handling the different pieces of authentication, including management of the client ID that allows you to connect to a specific Cognito user pool, and allowing for things like password verification changes and displaying certain web links based on authentication status. Lastly, we have the React and Amplify frameworks. As mentioned, Cognito uses authentication services by developing those in the backend, but Amplify is the full stack framework that is offered by AWS services that allows you to communicate between the front end and the back end. So AWS Amplify allows for us to use the JavaScript files that we built in the front to actually connect to the Cognito user pools for authentication. And then it also allows us to accurately store data by reaching out to the Postgres database that's also linked to AWS. React, on the other hand, is the framework that we use to take on route handling and build the main components for our user interface, including the chat system, emailing capabilities, tables that display data, and the authentication pages for verification and password changes, for example, when you forget your password.
Our inexperience with technologies such as React and AWS led to tasks taking a lot longer than anticipated. The only option left for us was to spend more time reading through documentation that slowed down the development process, but also allowed us to build a more intuitive system. Another was an environmental constraint that turned into a challenge during our implementation, and it was choosing the wrong framework. When setting up our view-based skeleton using AWS, we ran into many contradicting dependency issues. We could quickly fix this by switching to React, a framework that was much more compatible with AWS. This, however, had its own downsides, as certain features we wanted from Vue were now not available. And the third challenge was during development, our clients changed certain pathways to our API, and we were not informed of this update. This led to a slowdown in development. We remedied this by meeting with JD, who was a Power Labs developer that created the API. During this meeting, he helped us get the API functional again, provided some insight into further development of the project. Our team spent the first bit of the semester turning our prototype that we created last semester into a skeleton web application with a nav bar, functional buttons, flexible tables, etc. After this, we once this was completed, we focused on creating a backend that would consist of a database and two APIs. One to pull in biometric athlete data into the database, and the other to pull from the database and display it in the front end. At the same time, we started developing many functionalities for our website, such as wellness request emails for athletes and welcome messages. As of recently, we've been building a chat system and authentication for users. We now plan to refine our system for the capstone conference that will be occurring on week 15 of the semester. To conclude, the project Power Lab has tasked us with creating will provide a flexible platform for evaluating athletes' wellness, keeping track of athletes' injuries, and improving workouts through biometric data displayed in an easy-to-read GUI interface. In the coming weeks, we'll expand on the scope of our project to not only coaches, but the staff and athletes as well.
So we're really